Hi, everyone. If you are tuning into this live stream, it's likely that you already know that All Tech is Human is a worldwide organization that focuses on developing community among all people who are interested in responsible tech, educating and upskilling people who want to enter into the field, and career development as well in the responsible tech field. Now, if you're a student tuning in, you may not know how to enter into these new and growing responsible tech spaces. So we wanted to offer this live stream, and we're going to be doing a number actually throughout the fall, saying how you can really just get started with an internship, find that first job, choose courses, a major, certificate programs, minors in college in a way that sets you up to enter into a responsible tech career. Now, we're doing this as part of an initiative for the All Tech is Human University Network. If you've never heard of that before, then man, I want to tell you something about it. So we're going to provide a link throughout the course of this live stream to where you can go and get more information about the university network and hopefully join, especially if you want to lead a chapter on your campus. So without further ado, let's actually get to the 5 main student speakers we have and the expert career counselor who will be on this live stream. And as they come on screen there, I'll introduce them. We've got Audrey Chang, a senior at Harvard College, Shivani Sundaresan, a senior at the University of Michigan. Nathan Darmon is a senior at Columbia. They're going to tell you about their internships in a second. Nikayda Harris is at Carleton University in Ottawa. And we've got Carissa Anderson, who's a master's student just starting, I think just landed actually at the Vrije Universiteit in Brussels. Also, very important, our expert from Baruch College is Niatu Bensienchil. And we're actually going to start our party with a question for Niatu. And then we'll move around amongst our student participants, speaking about their experiences, giving you their best advice about how to break into this field. You're going to be really impressed with the things that they've done this past summer and the advice they have to give. So Niatu, on a general level, we're going to start out with a question about what specific knowledge students took away from their internships this past summer. But what would you say is the main advice that you give to students about how to seek specific knowledge within a field?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on this call. The students are definitely the star of the show, so I'm happy to support with my insight and advice. So thank you, Steven, also to Ali Feldhausen, who sent me the invitation to be on this panel today. When it comes to working with students, the first thing, this might sound silly to say, but just breathe. Just set yourself down, because a lot of students are so anxious about they have to solve everything and have everything figured out right away. And that anxiety is not helpful or productive. So I just want to encourage everyone to breathe, and you have time to figure things out, right? So I just want to start there. That said, going to more practical pieces of it, I'll say 4 things. I'll try and do as quickly as possible. One is to go internally first. I think a lot of students, we often focus on what do you want to be? And I think that all of us should ask students, who are you? And what might the expression of that be in the form of work? And so by flipping the emphasis of that question, you're asking students to go internally first and figure out, what am I interested in? What am I passionate about? What are my values? And then, of course, we do care about skills that are important. But what we sometimes lose sight of, we've got skills that we have and skills that we enjoy using. We want to be at the intersection of those 2 things, because that's a great place to build a career. The tried and tested example I give is, you might be great at math. That doesn't mean you should be an accountant, right? And so trying to figure out, what do I like to do and what am I good at, and finding that connection, that's a great place to start building a career from and exploring your interests. And once you start going internally first, and one more addition to that is, what problems would you like to solve? Once you start to get a handle on those things, then it makes sense to go externally to start to explore possibilities and see what is out there in the world that might match those skills, interests, values, curiosities, problems you want to solve. And that is a great way to essentially anchor yourself and to conduct a search from a more stabilized anchor point, because you started within. And when you start turning externally, you want to explore possibilities as much as possible. This can come through obviously doing your research. There are great websites like vault.com, which is an encyclopedia of industry and career information. You can have informational interviews, reaching out to professionals that might be in the companies or the roles you're considering going for yourself, just to get a sense of what the lived experience is within those companies, those roles. You can read as much as you like, but nothing substitutes for speaking to a human and getting lived experience. So all tech is human. And so I want to always, have that human-centered approach to how we discover things and really figure out what it is that aligns with who we are and what we'd like to do in the world. And then once you start to get a sense of what roles might make sense for you from your research and your conversations, then we can get into the practicalities of actually launching and running a job search. This can look like building a targeted list of companies that might be offering the product, service, or solving the problems that you're interested in solving. And then from building that list, you really start to hone in with your networking process. The challenge for students is balancing volume with focus. And I understand that it might feel like you have to apply to 100 opportunities to land an internship. I'm not going to say I have a magic number in my head that you need to focus on because I can't give you that. But the more focused you are, it may drive down the volume of applications because you're clear on the industry you want to be in, the companies within that industry umbrella you want to focus on. And then from there, you can narrow it down to a more manageable set of companies to focus your efforts and time on as far as doing your research and doing your networking. And with the networking, it should be in conjunction with applications. We have to recognize the reality of deadlines to apply for things. And so you can't always build the 5 connections you need in every company before you reach out, before you actually apply to a job. And so I want to be sensitive to that. So think of it as a parallel process where you are networking simultaneously as applying to opportunities. And if you have a focused approach that, goes through the funnel I've mentioned so far, you will hopefully have more manageable search that's less anxiety provoking because there's less targets you're going after.
Fantastic. And I think what we'll see, we're going to keep coming back to Niatu to give professional advice throughout the course of this live stream. But I think what you'll see from our student experiences as well is many of the things you can learn as an individual within responsible tech, many of the things you can learn about the broader field that allows you to choose whether you'd like to be in this corner of it or that corner of it. And also many of the tips, tricks, and techniques that got them their internships. Those are really the 3 things we're going to cover. And we're going to start with really the first of those for our participants. It's the first sub question that we are addressing here, really, in our first go around. So that's the question: is what did you specifically learn in your internship this past summer? And reflecting on what Niatu said, you might actually say also, was it what you expected to learn? Was it what you wanted to learn? Audrey, how about you? Say a little bit about what your internship was first, and then the knowledge you gained.
Yeah, for sure. First, thanks so much for inviting me to speak. This summer, I conducted a literature review at LMU Munich, which is a university in Munich, through the NSF International Research Experiences for Students. So it's like an exchange program, which funded the research. And I was conducting a literature review on data labeling practices. So this is how the ways in which we label our data influence the quality of those labels in the context of label bias. And I would say, in terms of things that I learned about research and research culture, because the internship was in Europe, I have done a little bit of research in the States and a little bit of research because of the summer in Europe. And it really surprised me to notice how different research cultures were in terms of pace and like size of labs, types of labs. So that was really helpful in terms of like meeting other researchers and then like getting a sense of research as an institution.
Fantastic. Because I'm not terribly creative this round through, we're going to go alphabetical. So Carissa, how about you? What was your internship this summer? What did you take away in terms of knowledge for yourself?
So it has been a wonderful year for internships for me, actually. Earlier this spring, for spring semester, I worked kind of as an investigative journalism intern at the Real Facebook Oversight Board, which is not the Facebook Oversight Board, but there's an organization called the Citizens, and then the Real Facebook Oversight Board is a project of the citizens. And then my summer internship, which I actually finished tomorrow, which is very bittersweet, I've been working as a communications intern for the Technology and Democracy programs at New America, which is a think tank, and specifically for the technology and democracy programs, we've been really working on broadband access and elections, bridging the digital divide, things like that. So within my internship, both of these internships, kind of a common theme within them was tech policy, and it was so valuable because I learned a lot. For Real Facebook Oversight Board, they're more of a global team, so I got to work on an international team on international tech policy affairs. So I got to research AI policy in India, Brazil, the EU, all over the world, the US. And then within New America, I've been working at looking at different tech policies with a team of experts within the US and what is upcoming. So just learning how US Congress works in practicality and working with professionals in this has been so valuable. And that has been such a big takeaway for me this summer.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Carissa. And Nathan, how about you? Where were you working and what were your knowledge takeaways this summer?
Thanks. So I was at the Center for Humane Technology in San Francisco, and I was working directly with Carissa Harris and Daniel Burkes, who's now the new executive director. And I got to have a really interesting insight to the whole field by advising a lot of their interventions and solutions perspective for AI, for their upcoming documentary and upcoming work on the AI dilemma. And so what was so interesting about it is CHT has done a lot of work talking about here are the problems and here's why everything is going wrong, here are the misaligned incentives, and it wanted to focus a lot more on here are the actual solutions in different fields and here's what everyone can do. And so what it pushed me to do is I worked on a big roadmap of different interventions and different solutions for different actors. And that really opened my eyes to just both how big and how small the field was. How big in terms of how many different disciplines involved, how it interconnected legal solutions and policy and regulatory and cultural and economic, and how all of these different sectors sort of fit into one, and how small in terms of how everyone knew each other, especially, obviously not the intern level, but one level up, how it was really small interconnecting circles, even from different industries. And as someone who came from a very non-technical background and more of the legal route and the policy route, seeing how the legal and policy circles interacted with the tech circles and the econ circles and how they all kind of fit into a very, very small Venn diagram was quite cool.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. I want to circle back to any of the three who've spoken already and see if anybody wants to say whether something that they learned was really surprising to them. If you'd done the internal scoping of what you wanted to learn this summer, was anything that you learned just kind of like a shock in a good way?
I think for me, with New America, something I really appreciated there is that they really took the time to have different briefing sessions with the interns on different issues that they're working on, specifically at OTI, the Open Technology Institute there. So it wasn't necessarily something I went into it because I have a communications background. So when it comes to more technical matters, that is not my field of expertise. So when it comes to very specific things, I really don't know that too well when it comes to maybe it's coding or anything along those lines. So I really appreciated specifically within New America, they would take the time to brief the interns on different issues so we could be caught up to speed with the rest of the team. And it seemed like everyone's opinions were really valued, which I also appreciated. So it was really nice to, so for example, earlier today, we had a briefing specifically on AI privacy and I'm blanking on what else it was, but it was an AI and privacy briefing. Oh, and broadband. So being able to learn that when I didn't specifically go into an internship for that was very valuable to me.
Fantastic. Nikki, how about you? What were you up to this past summer? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, so thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and chat. In terms of what I was doing this summer, I am still currently working as an AI policy analyst for the Canadian Department of National Defense. That's been a really phenomenal experience, largely because I'm a policy student and this is the area of expertise that I wanted to get into. However, I didn't expect going into the defense sector. That wasn't really my vibe, but I think it's been really great because I've been able to tackle the ethical side of things. And so obviously, as conflicts are arising throughout the world, I think more and more governments are really starting to consider the importance of protecting those civilians in the conflict. And as AI technologies are integrated into that, a lot of people want the assurance that people are going to be considered and there's going to be that human center. In terms of some things that I was surprised by in terms of what I got to do, I think just like my team was really amazing. They gave me an opportunity for leadership that I think from other internship experiences I didn't really get. I can talk about this a little bit more later, but the opportunity to kind of lead my own portfolio was really great. And then also just seeing the integration of different governments and how we're all kind of simultaneously developing these policies together has been really great to, even though in the news, I would say that oftentimes there's this rhetoric around how we're not really working together, but I think in a lot of ways we still are.
Fantastic. Shivani, how about you? Well, you were busy this summer, as I remember it. Tell them about both the internships you had. Carissa did too. Both the internships.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, I'm Shivani. I'm a senior at the University of Michigan. And just to give you guys a little bit more background, so when I started at the University of Michigan, I was actually on the pre-law track. And then later after my freshman year, I really fell in love with computer science. So I guess ever since then, I've been trying to combine both of these interests in both policy and computer science. So this past summer, I tried to do an internship. So one more on the computer science side, and it was more technical, and one more on the policy side. So more on the technical side, I was a software engineering intern at Microsoft, and I worked on a security and compliance tool within Azure. So this tool basically tracked all of the different policies that were applied to different instances of Azure. So for example, like implementing GDPR rules on an Azure database, stuff like that. And it was basically a big dashboard for, like, I guess everyone within Azure to see whether everything was being compliant with all these different policies. And yeah, my second internship, which was more on the policy side, was through the Paragon Fellowship. So Paragon is a nonprofit organization that connects college students to different local governments within the US. So the one that I specifically worked on was with the Santa Clara local government. And this was a project to improve their information security with third-party vendors that were accessing the Santa Clara's database on all their citizens. And yeah, I guess like one thing that I was expecting to learn from my internships was, I guess like in the beginning, I decided to do two because I was initially planning on just deciding one or the other for, I guess, my future. But I guess after my experience with doing a software engineering internship, and a policy fellowship, I feel like I could probably do both at the same time, because I feel like the work that I was doing at Microsoft and the work that I was doing at Paragon were actually super intertwined. Like, I feel like the concepts that I was working on were pretty similar in both. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I learned from my internship experience.
Fantastic. Nyatu, you wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So both Shivani and Nikki have hit upon some interesting things when discussing their backgrounds prior to entering the internship they have. If I could quickly have all the students come off mute and quickly state, what is your current major? I'll start with Audrey.
I am a stat and CS joint concentration and a sociology secondary, which is like major and minor. Yeah.
All right, Shivani.
I'm a computer science and cognitive science double degree.
Okay, Nathan.
I'm also doing a dual degree. So at Columbia, I'm majoring in philosophy, and I spent a bit of time in Europe at Sciences Po, where I did government.
Okay, nice. I went to Sciences Po my junior year abroad. That's a funny thing to have in common. Carissa, what's your major?
My bachelor's was in media and communications, and then I'm doing my Master of Science in communication and digital media in Europe.
Okay, and Nikki.
I study public affairs and policy management with a specialization in international relations and conflict management, and a minor in Mandarin.
All right, got it, got it. Thank you all. So the reason I wanted to ask that question for all the students listening is just to highlight the diversity of majors we have represented on this call with just 5 students. There are a couple who've already dipped their toes in computer science, but we have philosophy, we've got journalism, we've got public policy, all represented on this call, and they are all finding a pathway into responsible tech. And so I want to just highlight that. And a tagline of mine is your degree is not your destiny. And so I want all students to remember that you can start at so many different entry points in terms of what you do currently now in undergrad, but that doesn't determine your final destination once you graduate. And so that's why it is so important to really focus in on what am I interested in? What kind of what lights me up in terms of, I want to pursue. What would I do if I didn't have to be paid, really start to think about those type of questions. And that might help you find the route into what you want to do. And just pick something in school that you're really interested in, that you hopefully do very well in, because grades count to a certain degree, but you're more than a number. And then, over time, that can help to lead you to the ultimate destination of where you may start your career. And we're all here talking about responsible tech. And all these students are coming in from very different backgrounds, and they're all finding a place within this atmosphere, within the sphere.
Fantastic. I don't know, what would I do if I didn't have to get paid? I'd be a Little Debbie snack cake taste tester, but I think that's maybe not the message we should be sending. Another observation here is look how many fields need responsible tech interns. How many fields are growing responsible tech? In some ways, tech just is responsible tech. We need a world in which all tech jobs are responsible tech jobs. But think what we've got represented here on this call: an academic internship, an internship in industry, major civil society organizations represented, a government internship, and a policy advocacy angle as well to 2 of the internships, right? Which is slightly different than other civil society organizations. So the space is growing, and it's welcome to a lot of people with a lot of different educational backgrounds. So therefore, let's move on to our second question, which is, what did you actually learn about the field of responsible tech this summer? And again, because I'm not terribly creative, I'm going to try to guess which of your universities is actually furthest north and move down from there. And Nikki, I think that's got to start with you.
Yes, love being the Canadian on the call. But in terms of what I learned about the field of responsible tech, the first thing that comes to mind is definitely that everyone is still learning. I think in terms of AI specifically, and I dealt a little bit with quantum, those are things that are still unfolding before us. And so the policy development is happening as we speak. One of the things that I loved about my team is that we had like reading lists, or any new information that would come out, people would just spread it in our Teams chat and encourage us to read that, because I knew that my coworkers, they didn't always have the answers, and people were always willing to admit like, hey, I'm still learning. And especially being specifically on the policy team, we also like worked with the technical side of things. But a lot of people don't really have that technical background as policymakers. And so learning also how to work with technical people, I think, is extremely important in terms of responsible tech. I know that when I even see like job descriptions, oftentimes they'll say things like, we want someone that can like translate that language and like communicate between the two groups. And so if you are looking to be a policymaker in this space, I think those are really important things to think about. And if you're trying to enter into the space, those are the type of skills that I think people are looking for. People that are curious, which I know can be pretty vague, but always looking to learn and get to know more.
So important. So many people I talk to in this space say communication skills are actually at the top of the list of what you need to enter into this space. Got to be talking to people and learning from them all the time. It's an emerging space, lots to learn. And because you were a communication major, and because I'm actually guessing that Brussels is maybe next under Ottawa, we're going to go to you, Carissa. What did you learn about the responsible tech field?
I think so. As I mentioned earlier, I really do not have a technical background at all. So I think the thing I learned most within my internships this summer is that a lot of people don't have a technical background, and that's okay. Because if the whole world was just full of computer scientists, and that is such a valuable career, but if everyone was a computer scientist, then there wouldn't be as much diversity to add into the conversation. There is so much value within having a multidisciplinary approach and everyone has different things to bring to the table. And as a communications student, I have valuable things that maybe someone that only studies computer science might not know the intricacies of my major, and I definitely don't know the broad field of their major. So realizing your strengths are valuable, and even your weaknesses, someone will be able to supplement your weaknesses. Knowing exactly what you have learned is valuable. And specifically within responsible tech, I think it's important to recognize that responsible tech just isn't one big thing. It's not one topic. There's so many subfields of responsible technology. Maybe that means you want to work in climate sustainability. Maybe that means you want to work in AI ethics or policy or ensuring social media is safer for kids. There are so many branches of responsible technology where you're able to find your niche and grow within that niche. So it's not limited to just one big topic. I think there's a lot of subfields that you are able to branch into and use your skills to just really benefit this conversation that's flourishing with so many different perspectives.
Fantastic. I'm going to guess that Michigan is next, Shivani. Can't wait for somebody on the LinkedIn Live to fact check my ignorance of geography, but I'm going to go with Michigan next.
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, I really agree with the points that Nikki and Carissa brought up, because I feel like those are some things that I also learned from my internships, especially at Paragon, where I guess translating all of my technical, like data specific language into actionable policies that the government can take is like a super important skill. And also, I guess the people that I worked with at the fellowship were also from a bunch of different backgrounds, just like the people on this current panel. So yeah, I guess I really resonated with those 2 points. But also another thing that I learned was the importance of youth engagement in these responsible tech discussions, because we are the primary users of all of these emerging technologies and have a pretty big stake in shaping responsible tech policies that will impact our futures. So yeah, I guess that's one thing that I took away from my summer as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Audrey, how about you?
Yeah, echoing a lot of what Nikki, Carissa, and Shivani have all said, I would say on the technical side also, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of really interesting questions to ask. So I felt that going into the summer, an easy thought or fear would be that it's a bit too late to enter the field, or people are already more established or have experience. But especially within research, and I am sure it's the same within policy too, there are lots of yet unanswered questions and like areas to explore. For me specifically within like data labeling and dataset use, there are lots of ways in which the quality of our data labels haven't been either documented or their documentation hasn't been utilized to like improve the quality of resulting models and things. But it was very refreshing and invigorating to learn how new the field is, because it means that there's a lot that interested folks can do in stepping in. And then one more thing that also echoes what previous people have been saying, because I also share a social science background, I went to 2 different conferences this summer. One was ChiWork, which is a conference on human-computer interaction and workplace tech. And then the other one was ICML, which is an international conference on like ML methods. I was really impressed and happy to feel how much social science methods, backgrounds, and insights were valued there. And so similar to Shivani's experience in realizing that she could blend both her technical and social science interests, I found a similar experience, but also within research, that it is really valuable to like bring, if you're interested in social science, that curiosity and angle towards answering questions, a human-centered view, especially when developing methods that will ultimately serve human-centered problems.
Great, Nathan. How about you?
Yeah, so I came into this whole field thinking that the whole responsible tech movement was very incremental, that it was focused on really small changes, one step at a time, And to a large extent, it's true, right? There's a lot of focus on oversight and on transparency, and all these things are really important. But it felt very frustrating to view the entire movement in this small incremental way. And I think something I discovered that I wasn't expecting at all during the summer is that there's a ton of people pushing for really radical and really bold moves and ideas and projects. I'm notably thinking of ideas on reimagining what platform governance looks like at the AI Democracy Foundation, reimagining what kinds of paradigms we use when we talk about tech at places like the Collective Intelligence Project. Or reimagining how the law deals with existing tech platforms. And so rather than treating it as small incremental changes, there's a number of really, really exciting places and forums and people advocating for this kind of reconceptualization of a lot of old paradigms. And it's a really exciting place to be. And I think it's a really exciting time to be in it, because we're right at the cusp where a lot of these discussions are happening. And it's encouraging for anyone entering the field to know, well, yeah, you can talk about small changes of how do we marginally improve the status quo. There's also really big discussions happening. They're incredibly exciting, novel, and just starting up.
Awesome. Nyatu, I know there are a number of reflections that you share with students all the time on exactly these topics. So let me turn to you.
Sure. This has been a really stimulating conversation so far, so I'm just loving it, trying to soak as much of it in as I can. I want to reflect on a couple of things that were said. One was by Shivani, and pardon me if I can't get the attribution to everybody for what I'm going to speak on, but I love how Shivani mentioned intentionally pursuing 2 different internships to cater to the 2 different parts of her brain, her personality, and her interests. And so this is just highlighting the importance of getting internship in the first place to figure out if this is right for you or not. And so it's incredibly valuable to have an affirmation or confirmation that, yes, I'm going in the right direction. It can be argued that it's equally valuable to find out that, hey, this is not for me. I need to pivot and do something else. And so if anything, this is a chance to, reality test for yourself if what you are currently interested in might be sustainable for you within the future. And so if you do have the opportunity to try out multiple things while you're in college, please do so. This is your time to experiment. It's your time to figure out who you are and what you would like to do going forward. So experiment as much as you can. It's low risk. You don't have big bills to pay just yet. So have fun with it and try and figure out, where it is you want to land. I also love the conversation about, I think it was Carissa, just the variety of people that come to responsible tech. So again, just talking about the need for a diverse skill set to come into the field and for you to all realize that your current major, whatever it is, has value in this emerging space, which is literally being defined as we move along. And so if you see yourself being in this space, you can assert to yourself, I can bring value to it from my current perspective, my training and my skills, because we're all building this thing together. In terms of, what's going on, I always reference Black Mirror when it comes to responsible tech and all the things that we're focusing on. I'm stealing this. I heard this on a podcast, I think is called Decode Recode with Kara Swisher. And she had a guest on saying that when new tech is being invented, the creators of tech should say, what would the Black Mirror episode for this tech look like? And I think that's a really important question that, folks should ask when building these things. And that's why we can't have just engineers. We need people from other backgrounds and disciplines to speak into what's being built so that what comes out on the other end is something that is hopefully responsible and won't kill us like the Terminator in future. And so that being said, as you move forward, practically try and look for those internships. Again, start with yourself. All these individuals on this call have very diverse interests, and they are staying true to who they are and those interests in figuring out what next steps they want to take as far as pursuing an interest. So, please take a cue from them. They're following their internal compass, their passions, their interests to pursue that next step for themselves within responsible tech.
Yeah. So you've heard a lot on this call already about the incredible internships, the lessons learned that they'll take into their personal knowledge. That's the lessons learned about the field generally. We're going to do a final sort of lightning round on how they got these incredible internships, right? Because all this advice doesn't mean anything unless you know how to make those connections and get the internship. And before we start, with that, I'll say one of the main things I recommend is join All Tech is Human. We've got a Slack that's got over 10,000 people in, I believe, approaching 100 countries, all of whom you can actually just approach and say, hey, like, what could I learn from you? And we've got this thing called a university network. And the university network is actually working on finding internship listings, listing them out for students, as well as a bunch of other interventions that will help you on your campus, teach other people about responsible tech, get into the space generally. So All Tech is Human is doing a lot of this work. But beyond that, could you tell us what tips, tricks, techniques you'd want to convey to students out there about how to get that first internship in responsible tech? Nathan Darmon.
Picking it up again. So I approached internships this summer really differently than I had other summers, in that I actively tried to not get an internship. And instead, what I was looking for is a mentor. And I think there's a pretty key difference in that I wasn't looking for an institution with a pre-existing program. And in fact, I wasn't finding anything that really particularly fit what I wanted in existing programs. And so rather, I started with a blank page thinking, well, who are the 3 or 4 people that I just really look up to that I would love to become in 20, 30 years? And starting with that list of, and it's not just a professional list, it's who are the people who embody the kind of life intellectually and professionally, but also personally, that I'd really love to lead one day, and how can I learn them? And then finding them and really just, I cold emailed, and it works. And it's something that I wish I'd known sooner about. But once you find people that really speak to you, understanding why they speak to you, and emailing them, messaging them, and asking to meet. And so I did that first with Jonathan Haidt, and he responded almost immediately, and we got started working together. And then after that, when I was looking for something for the summer, I was looking for another mentor, and Tristan Harris is obviously a major figure in the field, and he put us in contact. But it's really something, there's 2 things I want to emphasize. One is that you don't have to follow internships that already exist in existing institutionalized programs. It's okay to reach out and see if you can create your own, or if you can somehow fit into a new role, if you think that's appropriate. And 2, to look for mentors and people who can guide you personally rather than just institutions.
Fantastic. Audrey Chang, what would you advise people who are listening to this call?
Yeah, I took a different approach in that I was a little bit more traditional, but I didn't just apply, so alongside applying to internships within portals, which can often feel like you're sending out your resume into a void, I reached out to professors and folks that I thought were doing really cool work that I already had previous connections with. Either I'd worked with them on research projects before, or they had taught me in classes, or we had had a previous conversation about where they were working. And I just made them aware that I was looking for research, or looking for summer internship positions. So I wasn't explicitly asking for positions at where they were working, but for those who were closer to me and knew me a little bit better, and who had colleagues that were running cool programs, they pointed me to programs that I didn't even know had existed, which is how I ended up in Munich this summer.
Yeah, fantastic. Can't say how much I appreciate all of you students. Just felt like saying that. And among all of you, the one I've actually known the longest is Shivani Sundaresan. What would you give advice to the students out there on?
Yeah, so I guess my main piece of advice, and the way I found people who are connected to my current internships, is just to, I guess, cold email people like both Nathan and Audrey were doing. Because I guess the field of responsible tech in general is, I guess it can be intimidating because it's usually run by, I guess, older people. But like I mentioned before, the responsible tech field is constantly changing. So I guess don't be intimidated by any experts, because I feel like the real experts are just people with genuine curiosity and interest in the field. So yeah, I guess that's my main piece of advice. So just reach out to people and don't be worried about how you'll be perceived by them, or whether they're more of an expert than you are or anything like that. And yeah, so basically I just kind of followed that philosophy and applied to a nonprofit called Youth for Privacy. So they're an NGO stakeholder group with the United Nations, and they basically advocate for data privacy for young people. And yeah, and through that experience, I met a bunch of people who were part of the Paragon Fellowship, which I then applied to later that fall, I think. And that's also how I met a few people at Microsoft that work specifically on security and compliance. So yeah, I guess my main piece of advice is just to reach out to as many people as you can and don't be intimidated by experts.
Yeah, fantastic. We had another call about careers, starting careers during the summer, where a specialist emphasized, as you reach out to people honestly are really flattered to hear, I admire what you do and would like to talk about how you got into it. So we heard that from Nathan, Audrey, and Shivani now, actually. And to all of you listening to this call, don't be afraid. Reach out, right? People would love to help with you. And then so we'll go to Carissa and then Nikki, and we'll close out with some advice from the outside. Carissa, go ahead.
Thank you. So for my first internship at the Real Facebook Oversight Board, I actually saw that in the All Tech is Human Slack. I saw the posting for that and I applied from there. I interviewed, I got it. So proof that it works. The job board is also such a great tool. I got a position last summer from the job board. So thank you, All Tech is Human, first of all, for that. And then for New America, I found the position on their website. I had been talking previously with people from the organization and just organizations that do that kind of work. I really like the think tank environment. So I was told about when they post their summer internships and I applied. So for advice for getting internships for students, I would say there's so much knowledge out there. If your school doesn't have those resources, seek out those resources yourself. There are so many free courses you can take. You don't even have to spend money to do it. I know Center for Humane Technology, where Nathan was this summer, has a great course. Other places also have great courses, books, podcasts. There's so much you can do to teach yourself. YouTube videos even. Watch past live streams, watch webinars and conferences and panels, and just be a sponge to all the knowledge, because a lot of times a lot of schools don't have classes that are like currently what's happening in responsible tech, because it is such an emerging field. So my advice to all students would be just be a sponge for knowledge and learn as much as you can and take the initiative to learn things yourself. And like Shivani was saying earlier, there's also like youth empowerment is such a valuable thing in responsible technology. And there are so many youth-led organizations that really push this that you can get involved in. So I would say if you are a student, find a youth organization. There's some for privacy, for social media, for responsible tech as a whole, for climate sustainability, whatever your niche is, I would say get involved, try to volunteer with them, maybe even get into a leadership position. And that not only boosts your resume, it helps you know other people in the space, it helps you network, it helps you move up the ladder, if you will. So that would be my advice to students.
Amazing. Nikki, take us home before we hear from Niatu.
Of course. So in terms of acquiring my internship experience, I would say, echoing what everyone else said, definitely networking. Cold emailing 100% works, but I would also add doing those informational chats, coffee chats. In terms of getting into the government, it can be a little bit tricky, but I would say just talking to people got me like my first foot in the door. And then when I was at a different department, I was just showing people my passion and interest in the space to the point where they connected me with somebody else that was working in the data space. And then when that person moved to a different department, they invited me along with them and got me a chat with the policy team. And so I cannot advocate enough for definitely just reaching out to people and showing your interest. But I would also go further. And as I said before, just being as passionate as you can to kind of build up on what Carissa was saying. I've definitely heard people telling me, based on like the research that I had done on my own, they said, you know, your passion is really showing through in our conversation, that I want to help you, I want to be a mentor for you, or I want to connect you with so-and-so person. And so I think that has helped me to open a lot of doors for me and provide me with opportunities. I would also say that well, for me at least on the call, if you ever like wanted to connect on LinkedIn or something like that, feel free to reach out because I love to help and support students. And I know that all of All Tech is Human, the university network, we love to help and support other young people. So yeah.
+1. So much great advice from the students here. So Niatu, why don't you take us home, sign it, seal it, and deliver it with a bit of advice.
Wow, no pressure at all. Thanks, Steven. So this has been so much fun, and I hope you all on the call have had fun, those who are listening, the students as well. The common thread there obviously was networking, networking above applying, right? It's not so that we don't apply. So I'll just underscore the all of the above approach that we all sort of touched on collectively. Because I work in career services, please use career services. We're here to help. We wouldn't be doing this job if we didn't care, if we didn't want to be here. So go visit your career service office. They're a bunch of great professionals who are looking to do the best they can to support you to achieve your goals and your dreams. Outside of that, I love the point about, doing work outside, showing your passion, building your own projects. I think one of the coolest things about the tech space in general, but also I think this can apply to a lot of fields, is you can create your own experience. You can build your own projects that pursue your own interests. And from an employer perspective, they eat that stuff up if a student has a project that relates to the internship they're applying for that they just did on their own, not because someone told them to do it, but because they're that passionate about it. And it's awesome to be able to have your own portfolio or something you can reference that you did yourself. So that's a great way to stand apart as a candidate as you go out there to look for opportunities. In addition to that, I love Nikki's point about passion. I'll add enthusiasm. Those things are contagious. And so by showing up as your best self in these conversations, you never know what doors that it can unlock for you in terms of being introduced to someone else. Oh, let me walk you down the hall and meet this person that we weren't going to talk to today, who's doing this other work that you might be interested in. And so, doing your best to show up as your most authentic self in those conversations, having as many as you can, is always going to pay off. And you get better and better the more informational interviews you have. Going back to Nathan's point, in terms of his approach, very unconventional, but potentially high payout, right? What I love about his approach is that he started with a blank piece of paper. And in my private practice as a career coach, sometimes I have my clients write their own ideal job description. This could be someone who is mid-career, they've been doing the same thing for 15 years, and they're trying to figure out their next step. You can also do this as a student. Write down what is it that you'd ideally see yourself doing as clearly as you can. It might evolve and change over time, that's fine. But Nathan started with a blank piece of paper and said, what do I want in a mentor? And so what was interesting about his approach is that often with these informational interviews, we tell students, don't ask for a job. Never, never, ever ask for a job. Instead, you ask for advice and that might land you a job, right? And so it might feel counterintuitive, but Nathan went out looking for advice in the form of a mentor, and that landed him his opportunities. And I think what helped him in this route is that he was quite thoughtful in his approach. And so I'm sure all the students on this call were very thoughtful in their outreach. You're not sending a 2 or 3 line email, hey, can I talk to you, doing cool stuff. You probably read their profile and maybe Googled them a little bit, saw more about their research, what their online presence was like, and crafted something thoughtful around what drew you in and made you want to talk to them. And so there's an article I wrote about connecting through curiosity. This is on my LinkedIn profile. And so that's my little tagline, connect through curiosity. And so when you're approaching individuals for networking, take the time to read what's available about them publicly so you can, tailor your outreach to them because they're the person you want to know. And what you're trying to do is build an authentic relationship. We're not users, we're not abusers here. This isn't transactional. This is, I'm trying to build a genuine connection to another human being. And you can do so by doing the research. I'm stealing a tagline from someone else. If you want 15 minutes of my time, show me you did 15 minutes of research about me. And so my guess is that all the students here did that before they did their outreach, which led to a higher success rate in people responding to their cold emails. So cold emailing is definitely helpful. It's a great tactic, but you got to be thoughtful in how you do it. And so to try and bring that all to a close, in your pursuit of an internship, it is really important to engage with as many humans as you can, because humans are the gatekeepers, the pathways, the connectors, your guides and gurus to where you ultimately want to be. So have as many conversations as you can with individuals. And in addition to that, yes, you have to apply because your name has to be in the system, because there's HR and there's processes, right? So it's a both and approach. A lot of life is both and. So please do both and in this case. But definitely prioritize human connections, because that can take you further faster than sending out 100 applications that aren't tailored, that aren't well researched or customized, and you may get nothing back. But a targeted approach where you've done your research, you know the space, you know the people, can yield massive results, because you know you want to be there and you're aligned with your passion, interest, enthusiasm to make those connections and hopefully take those next steps.
As we like to say at Niatu, all tech is human. Niatu, thank you so much for your time and your professional advice. And to all of the students on this call, I think it's apparent to everybody who's watched this live stream that their passion, their enthusiasm, their genuineness, and really most important, their generosity just shone through during our discussion here together today. And if you want to meet dozens more students like these, join the All Tech is Human University Network. Thank you for your time, all of you.